Today, we're going to be talking about why and when you should be using clippers and limiters. And the best part is we're going to do it quick and dirty as we always do on every video. I'm Lou, a mixing and mastering engineer based in Los Angeles with a credible history in music. And if you're looking to grow with some videos that are not just quick, but they're to the point and not overcomplicated, you're in the right place. Okay, so let's address one issue that I find all the time, which is people who don't have a clipper might try to use a limiter like a clipper, or those that just honestly don't know. Limiters cannot be used like clippers because of time constraint differences. For instance, a clipper will cut off anything that passes its threshold, while a limiter will actually add a very heavy amount of compression to go and push it down. So by nature, they are not the same and they cannot be used the same. As a basic example to this, you can take a piece of paper, right? If it was a limiter, you're setting a threshold and saying anything that goes above that threshold, I want you to add an extreme amount of compression, and it just starts crumbling that paper in, right? So what about a clipper? Aren't you destroying anything past it? Yes, but very differently. Instead of adding amounts of compression, you're literally just saying if it goes above it, just get rid of it. All of this is unaffected, but this is gone. It's just gone. Okay, so now that we got like the basic difference out of the way, let's talk about two types of clippers. There's soft clippers and hard clippers. A good example of a hard clipper is just like what you saw with the scissors. You set a threshold, and as soon as anything passes that threshold, it immediately just cuts the signal from there. Now, clippers can add a certain amount of distortion because you really are just shaving off the transient, which means the waveform is now being squared off immediately. And the more reduction you do with a clipper, the more distortion you're going to hear. Unlike a limiter, where a limiter might actually be a little more forgiving with that, but a little more about that when we explain more about limiters. Here's where it becomes a little more fun. Now, soft clippers actually round into the clipping. What that means is that depending on if you're using a plugin where you can actually choose how soon and how early it's doing this, most soft clippers just kind of have like a knee to it, almost like a knee for a compressor, where it starts to shave off some of those transients just before you really hit that threshold, and it adds a nice bit of saturation. And if you can dial it in, you can actually start adding a certain amount of warmth to your actual tracks or even the master bus. Let's dive into Pro Tools real quick and we'll get a little example of the two types of clippers real quick. For today's example in Pro Tools, we're going to be using a song called Love to Live by Park Lane. Now let's take a look at this track real quick. We're just going to give it a quick listen and then we'll start processing. Honestly, super sick record. Let's jump in. Let's play with some clippers. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add one of my favorite clippers. It's called Fire the Clip. I know that there is gold clip and everything, but I like that this one's just super simple, especially for the example that we're gonna do. We're gonna use auto gain on it so that we're not actually boosting the signal, but we're rather just matching it versus pushing into it. Not only that, but we can actually slide from soft knee to hard knee with this, which is going to be fun. And we're going to go ahead and give this a 20 decibel input range, just because I don't think 5 decibels is going to be enough to really exaggerate it. And we got different types, but we're just going to focus on just some hard knee or soft knee. We can always dive in on other clipping types and algorithms in another video. But let's jump in. So we've got this on the drums. Let's solo out the drums and let's take a listen. Okay, so right away you can hear that it just starts adding a certain amount of distortion. It's not very bad. In fact, it's kind of pleasant to a certain point. You can always dial it in even more. But now let's take a listen to the hard knee. If you notice, because low end requires so much energy, on hard knee, it's not very forgiving of the low end, but with soft knee, you actually have it being kind of musical in a sense. It still has that low thump, but it's got some fuzz to it now, and it's a really good creative tool for that. Now, here's a fan favorite as far as a limiter goes. It's the Pro L2 from FabFilter. It's pretty standard in our industry for many reasons, but we're just going to be using the example once again that we can do a one-to-one comparison, and we're just going to push into the limiter. And last time we were pushing about 20 decibels. Let's see about doing the same thing here. Cool, let's hit play. And there's a good example of what I was talking about earlier, where you're changing the balance of the elements in it. With the clipper, we didn't really see that. So let's just fire the clip back on. We're gonna go ahead and bypass that for now. We'll go into soft knee. Once again, we're gonna do auto and 20. And we'll just jump back and forth between the two, just so you can see with the soft knee. Actually, even let's do a hard knee, you know, brick wall versus hard knee. Let's just do that. As you can hear with the actual clipper, the balance doesn't really change much. Yes, it's gonna clip and distort, and certain elements change the way they feel, but with the limiter, it was very drastic how the balance of the mix of the drums actually played out. So this is kind of what I'm talking about when it comes to differences between limiters and clippers. Now, for the sake of giving limiters a fair shot when it comes to the whole balance of the elements thing, honestly speaking, if you push into it properly enough, you can get some pretty good perceived loudness out of it without having to do anything drastic. So check this out. We're just going to push into it little by little. Once again, we have matched input to output, so it's going to automatically compensate for everything. Let's just take a listen, and whatever number we end up landing on, we'll do the same thing with the clipper and just compare. Honestly, not bad. All right, let's bypass this, go to the clipper. We'll go into soft knee mode. And how much were we pushing? We were pushing 15.8, cool. So we're roughly gonna be about here-ish. So let's take a listen. So as you can hear in this example, the limiter was in fact cleaner, and it didn't actually make too much of a change. Yes, the low end got a little bit tighter, but that's to be expected. It's compression at the end of the day. It's heavy compression, and low end is usually going to require the most amount of energy in a mix. So honestly speaking, the low end tightening up, pretty characteristic, but otherwise pretty clean. But with the clipper, as you heard right away, you could hear the fuzz kicking in. It didn't change the balance of the mix, but it did add some audible distortion. Okay, so let's talk about a few common uses of clippers and limiters. Some of the most common uses for a clipper, for instance, would be, you know, instrument buses, where you might want to be able to blend it. You just don't want it to have any overs that are really starting to play with like your limiters or bus compression on the mix bus and things of that nature. So you might throw a clipper there to add some saturation if you go with a soft clipper, or a hard clipper just to make sure that there's no overs. While with a limiter, if you were to do the same thing, it's changing the balance of what's being mixed in that bus. So a clipper will help you preserve the mix balance, while a limiter might actually have you rebalance as you push into it. Now, the benefit of a limiter over the clipper is perceived loudness. As you push into an actual limiter, you're actually increasing the perceived loudness, while with a clipper, the more you push into it, the more you're shaving off and more distortion that you're adding. Personally, I'm a big fan of using soft clipping and rounding it out whenever it comes to mastering a record. Reason being is that I'm just trying to make sure that there's no transients forcing the limiter to push more compression onto the mix, forcing it to duck unnecessarily, maybe just because of one snare hit that was just louder than the others in the mix. Another really good example of soft clipping being helpful in a mix, adding distortion, is if you're running kicks or 808s through them and it gives it that nice little bit of buzz. But with a soft clipper, you're going to notice that it gives you more roundness on a kick, while a hard clipper is just cutting out that peak and adding a little bit of bite to it. If you found this video helpful at all, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what it is that you actually found useful about this video, or let me know if this is all information and there's something else I should have covered involving this. I appreciate everybody checking in as I make these videos better over time. It's still a learning process on my end. Let me know what you want to see next, and with that said, I'll see you guys next time.